Dragon Ball Z Kakarot was supposed to be the ultimate Dragon Ball Z experience, both for newcomers and veterans, blending both manga and animes to create the ultimate Dragon Ball Z video game and storytelling. When the game came out, it received high praise, and I, who was super excited about this game, bought it day one and played it. I thought it was one of the best Dragon Ball Z games ever made. But I quickly found out that a lot of people didn't really care for Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. I didn't understand why, as I thought it was pretty good. It had some flaws, but it was overall pretty good. That was until recently. I felt for some Dragon Ball content, and I decided to go back and replay Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. And I quickly saw why people dropped it or just don't care for it. This game has a lot of issues, but probably its biggest issue is that instead of fighting its enemies, it loves fighting itself. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, before I go any further, welcome to Stay Tuned on Gaming. I'm your host Damien, where I get to ramble about video games for as long as I want. And today, I'm going to be rambling about CyberConnect 2's Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Now, before I go any further, we have to talk about the hype going into Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, because there was a lot of hype before this game came out. First, it looked like Bandai Namco was putting a lot of money behind it, which is something very rare for them. They usually just churn out these games every year, play kind of the same or different, but it doesn't really matter. There's hardly any money put behind these titles, and from this game's trailers alone, we were like, this is some high budget stuff. I was down. Then, it was an RPG and not a normal 3D arena fighter. I mean, 3D arena fighters was Dragon Ball Z's go-to ever since Budokai Tenkaichi, and it became the standard for Dragon Ball Z games for like 10 years, even more than that. It wasn't until recently with Dragon Ball FighterZ that we really have anything super different. So, with this being an RPG, there was even more excitement as it harkened back to the old legacy of Goku days. But if that didn't get you hyped up, what did was the developers behind it, CyberConnect 2. Now, if you don't know who they are, they're the guys behind the Naruto Storm series. And if there was one thing I, as a Dragon Ball Z fan, wanted, it was that CyberConnect 2 make a Dragon Ball Z game. If they could even just give me 10% of what they did in that game, I would die happy. So to find out that they were working on this game, it made everyone turn heads. So the day finally came for when it launched, me super excited, played it day one, and well, I liked it. I really did enjoy this game. I just didn't see the issues. Maybe I was blinded by just the nostalgia, or I was blinded by how excited I was. But playing this game again makes me really not like it. I really just dislike something with Kakarot that holds it back from even being an above average Dragon Ball Z game. Now, I know a lot of people like this game, and I'm going to explain to you where the game just has a lot of issues and where it fights itself on every facet. So let's get into it. If there's any place to start, let's start with the story. Now, Kakarot tells the story of Dragon Ball Z, the entire story, all the way from the Saiyan saga up to the Buu saga, and it does it in probably the most accurate manga way we've ever had. Something that the anime has never done. Even Kai was not as accurate, I think, as this game has, even when it does blend in some of the anime moments together, which I think is pretty cool. If you've never done anything with Dragon Ball or you want to get into Dragon Ball, I would say Kakarot is a good way to go, unless you want to watch like 80 plus episodes of Dragon Ball Z. This is actually a pretty good thing. For veterans, you might not enjoy it. And for me, it's because of how this game presents the story, or how it just feels like the game decides to fight itself in the second half. What I mean by that is, I feel this game is cut into two halves. The first half dealing with the Saiyan and the Frieza saga, and the second half dealing with the Cell and the Buu saga. These two halves are not like each other whatsoever. The Saiyan and the Frieza arc sagas are done exceptionally well. Well paced, presented well, and makes you get through the flow of the game. That great quality and pacing completely falls off in the Cell and the Buu saga. Like, I sat there to myself thinking, why is this game feel so weird? The quality dips, the storytelling dips, the pacing is all over. And some of the cool stuff that happened in the first half of the game, yeah, well, they're not happening now. The game has 3 main cutscenes. the standing around talking, the in-game cutscenes, and then these awesome animated cutscenes that obviously CyberConnect 2 worked on. There's a lot of that in the first half of the game. Come to the Selling Boo Saga, they're hardly ever there, and if they are there, they're like a minute long, maybe even 2 minutes. We get more of this standing around talking, where those cutscenes can last like 10 to 15 minutes. Like, they just start talking in this big roundabout way, when I'm like, you could have just made it 2 minutes and it would have been way better than what they did. Don't get me wrong, there are some high moments and some really cool moments, but it just doesn't hold up. It felt like two different developers made this game, where I really enjoyed the first half. The second half felt like someone else walked in and said, now we're making the game. Maybe CyberConnect 2 ran out of time, maybe they ran out of budget and spent it all in the first half, but it just limps to the end of the game. And for veterans and people who have played every Dragon Ball Z game under the sun, a retelling of Dragon Ball Z's story is nothing new. But this game's story of Dragon Ball Z is like 15 hours long. 15 hours! I've played every Dragon Ball Z game under the sun, and most of them retell the story of Dragon Ball Z, but they've told it in a shorter way, more concise way, and easier to understand. Seriously, like the Tenkaichi games tell the story of Dragon Ball Z in like what, 5 hours, 3 hours? You get all of it. You go through the whole saga, and it's way more interestingly presented as well than anything in Kakarot. There are some high moments, but there's a lot more of just, when is this coming to an end? This is even sadder because I remember when I played the game, you couldn't like fast forward or skip or anything. You were in it. You were locked in these cutscenes and you had to watch them. I think now they allow you to like skip and fast forward, because without that, it's just sometimes I'm like, I can't finish this game because it's so boring. And I don't mean because I've played the Dragon Ball Z stories so many times. I've always loved playing the stories. I don't like it here whatsoever. Quality is all over the place. Pacing is just bad. And even the side missions, right? The side missions I thought were going to be really cool because I remember Akira Toriyama said he was going to work on some. They're forgettable. They're totally forgettable. You won't remember any of them whatsoever. And there aren't even any fun ones at all. The story also doesn't really move out of Dragon Ball Z. Like, they stay in Dragon Ball Z, which is fine, but I would have loved if you did some like side stuff where maybe you delve into the movies, or maybe you sneak peek into Super. None of that happens. It's straight end to end. And this just feels like a game that wanted to do all this cool stuff, and at the end the game said, no, you're not doing any of that. I believe it could have worked in some cases, but the second half of the game really hurts it. It's also the longest part of the game. The Boo and the Cell Saga are like the longest sagas in it, the Boo Saga being the longest, but they really feel like they just drag out this game. So at the end, it just limps to the finish, and you kind of are like, well, that was something. This, the realm of storytelling, hurts the exploration as well. When getting into exploration, again, the game does something really good. It recreates the world of Dragon Ball in probably one of the best ways I've ever seen. The world is so beautiful and highly detailed that we've never seen before. You get to visit locations like Capsule Corp, Goku's house, Land of the Kais, Namek, even Kame House, and they all are really, really awesome. The problem is, it's also goddamn boring. Look, there's stuff you can do in this game, like hunting, fishing, materials, going in a car, flying on the Nimbus. You can do random fights, but it's also even getting the Dragon Balls, but it's just so boring. You don't have to do all of it. It feels like filler. Like really, really bad filler. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, it's good for the first like couple of hours. When I'm halfway through this game, I don't even care anymore. I'm just flying from one mission to the next, which it sucks because, like I said, it's beautiful. It's so amazing to see these locations and these areas. I don't really care after 5 hours. After 5 hours, I don't want to fish anymore. I don't even want to get parts for my car. I don't want to do the weird robot thing. Like, they're so slow, you might as well just fly. To break up the monotony, You can do like random encounters and fight people. I'll get to the gameplay a bit later, but even that becomes tedious. The thing you'll probably do the most when you are out in the world exploring is collecting Z-orbs. Now these Z-orbs all have like these different colors, and they're basically used for leveling up your characters and your moves. So you'll be collecting a lot of them, and I kinda like it. I just had this dopamine level whenever I collected one, and I thought it was fun. And sometimes they're hiding in like secret areas and stuff like that. But that's really it. I admit there was some fun stuff, and I did like some of the random encounters. But that's really it. It's a game that just has beautiful scenery and really nothing to do after a while. And then this plays into the gameplay. Let's start with the gameplay. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot's gameplay is serviceable. Look, it's good, it's okay, but there's really nothing in depth with it or memorable about it. If I would compare it to another Dragon Ball Z game, it mostly plays like Xenoverse and kind of like Tenkaichi. It's your normal 3D big arena fighter that you've seen every Dragon Ball Z game play. But unlike those games where you can make that gameplay fun, not really here. The gameplay becomes boring, or the combat becomes boring after 3 to 5 hours, which sucks. Now you have your normal standard. Circle is your tap 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 circle, and you basically can do everything. Square is your key attack, X is your dodge, triangle is charging your key. You can then push like L2 to do your special moves. You can use items, and you can also transform into like Super Saiyan 1, 2, or 3, depending on who you play as. You'll also sometimes have support characters, and these support characters, you can also choose which moves they make as well. You can use items like healing items as well, which is very important. Their enemies and you also have a stun meter. If you break that stun meter, you get to do more damage to the opponent. And that's really it. The combat never changes. It stays the same. Very forgetful and very, very boring. I found myself not caring for combat after a while, and mostly just trying to cheat the combat out as quick as I can, using the spirit bomb, attacking like 6 enemies, and then just having everyone start with their big major attack. And that's it. It looks good. Like, there's some really cool moments and flashy things, but who cares when you are having to push just circle to do everything? The block button is also very powerful, as you can just block a lot of attacks if you get in your way. But sometimes the combat is difficult or very, very cheap. Like, they can stun lock you into a lot of things if you're not careful. And if you don't level up your characters enough, then you can find yourself having a really, really tough time. And sometimes, as some moves are hidden behind these training sections, can be really, really difficult as you're fighting 3-on-1. And like I said, the combat can be very, very cheap. So difficulty is all over the place. Sometimes easy, sometimes it's difficult for no reason, and sometimes, or most of the time, you don't really care. You're just gonna be very, very cheap in it. It seems like CyberConnect 2 couldn't get what Dragon Ball Z's combat is supposed to be. Since I've played Tenkaichi games and other games that are similar to what this game plays for hours on end, and I was never bored once, I got quickly bored of the combat here. And that's maybe due to the RPG mechanics, which all suck. Now, yes, this game has RPG mechanics. It has a level up system and giant skill trees. Every character in the game has giant skill trees, and that's even counting the support only characters. That's right, there are characters you can change into and explore the world and fight as, but then there are the other characters that are support only, and they also have these giant skill trees. And the things you unlock in these giant skill trees, they're all pretty boring. Most of them is buffs and moves. Now, the moves are nothing to write home about. Most of them are just enhanced versions that deal more damage of the original move, or take less ki. Transformations will take less ki and do more damage. As for the buffs, they can either be for combat or they can be for exploration. And you can switch out what you want, but yeah, who the hell really cares? Seriously, I didn't care whatsoever. I would just get to the best move and then equip it. But the lock stuff is crazy. Like, these moves, or the further down the tree you go, are locked by levels, and sometimes the levels are insane, like 120 or 80 or 90. And I'm like, I'm never going to grind as much as this game thinks I'm going to grind, because first, the combat is boring and the gameplay is boring. So why the hell would I want to grind to get level 3 Super Kamehameha? Like, it just doesn't really make sense why everyone has this giant tree. Like, they could have taken this out and it wouldn't have made any difference to the gameplay. You would have just leveled up your moves normally, or you just level them up as you fight. Why do I need this giant tree? You know, you're gonna use the Z orbs that you find all over the world, and while that cost at first seems like a loss, eventually you don't really care. You'll have so many Z orbs that you don't even know what to do with them, and you can't spend them on anything else but leveling up. So what's the point of having them when you lock it around like 100 and level 20? Like, it's totally pointless. It's terrible. The other mechanics are like you can use items to get extra XP or health for this next fight. You're gonna not use them after a while. It's totally pointless. The materials, like I said, are used for the combat room and the training room. You're mainly gonna just do these because you want the extra moves that do more damage, not because they look cooler, just because they finish the fight much quicker. And that's really it. Now, there's no more other gameplay Dragon Ball Z stuff. Like, you can look for the Dragon Balls and fight other characters, or just wish to get like extra orbs or items, and that's really it. The other thing you can also do is make these community boards, like get these medals or these tokens or whatever, and you can make like this board that gives you a lot of buffs. If you merge the two characters together that have like a past or something with, you can even increase it and buff it up. You can also give gifts to these like token stuff, which increases their rating. This I actually found to be pretty fun. I was like, this is actually really fun. Trying to intricately build this board because I want a full max, or trying to figure out who goes with who, was actually pretty interesting. And I did like giving them gifts to increase their rating so I could get better stuff on the board. This was fun. I really had a lot of fun with that. That was a great addition. Everything else in this game just feels like filler and they didn't think it through. It felt like they wanted this game to be fun. They wanted this game to hearken the old Dragon Ball Z games, but what they made wasn't that. The side missions were not interesting whatsoever. And it sucks because, like I said, post-game, this game could have been really fun and delve into what Dragon Ball Z stories are. Like, they could have gone into the movie stuff. Like, just have a side story where I fight Android 13 for the hell of it, you know, just for some fun. But no, none of that's in there. This game doesn't have that ability to make me want to play it over and over again. I could play Tenkaichi for 10, 15 hours straight. I can't play Kakarot for that long. Which is a shame, because when you see the DLC of the game, where they are like 4, Resurrection of F, Battle of the Gods, there's the episode of Bardock, History of Trunks, and a new one that's coming out that's going to be doing the final arc of Dragon Ball. And that all sounds amazing. Like, I would love to see that, but it's not in the main game. Like, all that stuff that you could have fun with, not in the main game. Like, none of the Broly stuff, or even giving a hint into Super. It's just weird. At the end of the day, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, to me, is like the Super Saiyan 3 of Dragon Ball Z games. It looks good, it has awesome power, it just comes out of nowhere and it hits you in the face and you're like, oh, this is going to be the next big thing. And then it's quickly totally forgotten about. At best, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is average. And at worst of times, it's meh. When I finished the game, I sat there to myself thinking, how would I rank this game after replaying it? And it wouldn't be high on my list. Would I say to people that's never played Dragon Ball to play this game, or know anything about Dragon Ball to play this game? Yes. I do think if you play it, it is the most complete version of the story that's ever been told in video games. And anime, I think it's better than the anime. Of course, you read the manga would be better. But I wouldn't say if you're a long-time Dragon Ball fan to play this. It's too long, and it just does weird things to drag out a lot of the gameplay. I would say that to test it out would be good to do, and to play the game in small doses, because trying to sit 10 hours to 15 hours straight and play this game is tedious. So tedious. And then don't try to 100% it as well. Just don't. It's not worth it. Platinum in the game is easy. It's easy to platinum the game. You don't even have to collect half of what the game wants you to do. But platinuming it, super easy. Don't 100% it though. So if you find it for free on a streaming service somewhere, that's a good recommendation to play. But I wouldn't recommend purchasing this at a high price. You can probably find it for sale really, really good. But if you are interested, I do recommend taking the dip and then playing in small doses. What's just small doses. Super Saiyan 3 looks cool. It has all the best moves, but it's also quickly forgotten and no one talks about it anymore. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot will be remembered as the game that pushed Dragon Ball Z games in a new light. But it also showed that sometimes we like the old a lot better than the new. Just look at what Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4 was announced. I'm super stoked for that. I cannot wait. When this game was announced was the same, but I doubt we'll remember Kakarot in the far future. And that's the video, guys. What did you guys think about Dragon Ball Z Kakarot? Tell me down below. I know there's a lot of people that love it, but there's a lot of people that just don't care for Kakarot. Like I said in my feelings, it's the Super Saiyan 3. It looks good, everything about it, but that's really it. So comment below, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And also, follow me on my gameplay channel. I just started it. No one's really watching it. So go and follow it. It's called Gaming on the Backlog. I'm currently playing through Blasphemous. I thought I'd just make the channel and play it and try to clear all my backlog. So follow me there. Follow me if you want to get any gameplay stuff on Blasphemous at the moment. I plan to play a bunch of games and clear my backlog. I'll see you guys next time.